Hey guys, and welcome to the newest episode of Be Hero Presents the Bump Card Wrestling Podcast. I am your host, as always, Brian, and with me tonight is my tag partner, Psycho. How you doing tonight, Psycho?
I'm doing pretty good. Tired as always, but otherwise good.
Well, I see that nothing has changed in your life.
Nothing on the surface, I guess.
Yeah. Your sleeping patterns, at least, have not changed.
No, I fall asleep randomly more, but you know.
Yeah. Hopefully not on the freeway.
Nope, haven't done that.
You know the old saying, I want to go like my grandfather in my sleep and not like his passengers.
Exactly.
All right. Well, that being said, guys, tonight we're going to talk about, ironically, Dream. Kind of worked out perfectly. That was not intended. Specifically, Dream matches. Matches that could have happened and or possibly not could have happened in the way we wanted to, but we would love to see. We're going to first talk about some of the matches that were Dream matches that could have happened, right? So ones that the guys were, working at the same time. Storyline just never worked out. One was maybe injured, something like that. And then if we have any other ideas of ones maybe that couldn't have happened because they were just out of time differences, so like Hogan Cena kind of thing or something like that, then we could talk about those. Well, let's start off with ones that we totally could have seen happening. So, before we get started, I want to remind you guys to follow up with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at BeHero Media. And you can always go to BeHeroMedia.com where we post all of our episodes live right on there as soon as they drop, as well as we are constantly doing blog reviews and pretty much everything is BeHero Media. All right, with that being said, Psycho, start us off. What is your first Dream match?
And real quick, I want to say that how I thought of this idea was I was actually listening to a podcast, and it was actually the Something to Wrestle podcast with Bruce Pritchard. And but I'm like way behind like I normally am on wrestling, and so it's like from like 2019, and so that's where I came up with this idea.
That was pre-COVID, so it was like 10 years ago.
Pretty much. Yes. It's actually kind of interesting, like listening to them, because like listening to them right up until the world fell apart is going to be really interesting to see.
Right.
It's almost like the Titanic. You see the iceberg coming, it's coming, but you just there's no way to prevent from hitting it.
It's a stationary thing that moves a few feet a day, but yet still runs right into it. Anyhow.
Exactly. Are we talking about the iceberg? Or are we talking about myself? Because that's pretty much like
Yes.
Okay. So the first Dream match is I'll start with the three, because they named three big matches that just could have happened, but they just didn't. So I'll name the first one, and we got Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Goldberg. This is a match that obviously when Stone Cold was red hot during the Monday Night Wars and Goldberg was hot on the WCW side, people had thought about this Dream match, and they got compared to each other a lot because they both wore black trunks.
And we're bald.
Yeah, exactly. That, and they both had goatees. So pretty much the extent. But they were kind of leading the charge. And
wait, real quick before you go on. I wear long tights ish. I have a beard and I'm bald. So does that mean I'm Ricochet?
Sure.
Yay!
Other than the beard, you could have been talking about me, but
yeah, right.
But we've seen that Dream match. Probably a nightmare for you.
Wow. All right, so Berg and Austin.
Yeah. Now, obviously, when they were in opposite promotions, it wasn't going to happen. However, when when WWE bought out WCW, and then Goldberg eventually ended up coming over, it could have happened. They were right there. Austin was kind of on his way out. Actually, Austin had his last match.
I was gonna say, I
Actually,
think he'd
the
already had
night
his last match before,
before,
yeah.
the night before Goldberg debuted. So they kind of just missed each other. But I mean, it was possible. That probably would have been the best possible place for it to happen in time. Instead, we got Goldberg versus The Rock, which, was a big match too. But I'm a little sad we didn't see Austin versus Goldberg. And maybe now we could still see it, actually, because Austin, has had a return match against Kevin Owens at WrestleMania. Goldberg, if they offered him enough money, he could do it. Maybe we could see it in a Saudi Arabia show. I don't know. It's a possibility. It could still happen.
A match where neither guy bumps, and they probably work out into the crowd, and then Goldberg eventually kills Austin.
Yeah, I didn't say it would be any good right now. And I don't know if it would have been very good back then either, because maybe they just kind of worked different styles. But it would have been unique to see, and I can guarantee if they booked that match, it would get a big buy rate. It would get a lot of people watching.
Yeah, it would have a huge buy rate for all the nostalgia. Like, literally the top two guys during the Monday Night Wars going against each other finally, right? It would have been a huge pay-per-view sale. But even at the time that it could have possibly happened, I don't see that match being good. One, Goldberg was actually somehow in worse shape around that time when he came back. When he came to the WWE, he was physically in fine shape, but in worse wrestling shape, if that makes sense. Because he had some of the worst matches I'd ever seen him have during that time, including the one with him and Brock. And then Austin was injured. Like, he already had his last match, and he was done. So, as much as it would have been cool to see, and there was that slimmest of possibilities, I'm glad it didn't happen because, well, Austin's alive still. So,
yeah, we know what happened to Brett.
Yeah, right. We get Austin Does America, so
yeah.
You watch that show? It was actually pretty funny.
I have not actually, but and I think the reason Goldberg's matches weren't very good after that point too is because in WCW they kind of hid his weaknesses by keeping the matches very short, and when he went to WWE, they actually had him attempting to do 15-minute plus matches, and it doesn't end up so well. You notice on his return that he's had, like, in the last few years, all of his matches kept super short, and it was actually a good return because he was able to have decent matches.
Except for one.
Yes. Which was another dream match.
Him and Taker.
At one point, against Undertaker. And
he almost killed Taker.
Yes, almost killed Taker. And maybe it's a good thing that match with Austin never happened.
Right.
Okay. So the next one is well, we'll keep on the Austin train here. Stone Cold Steve Austin against Hulk Hogan. That is a match that very easily could have happened.
Yep.
I guess there's 2 times it could have happened, but it wouldn't have meant as much the first time around. Yeah, the first time it could have happened is when Hogan entered WCW and stunning Steve Austin was there in WCW, and it could have happened then. But I think if it had happened then, number one, Austin wasn't the big attraction that he would later become, and it probably would have been, a quick squash for Hogan, because that's kind of how Austin was being booked there. He lost in like 10 seconds to Hacksaw Jim Duggan. So
yeah.
So that wouldn't have been any good there. But then when Hogan, after WCW was bought out, he came over to the WWE, and you had Hollywood Hulk Hogan there, and Austin was there. He was still wrestling for he would still be wrestling for like
Well, they
another
had the
year.
whole NWO angle in general because when they were building to Rock Hogan, they also had the angle with Austin and
Scott Hall.
Hall. So yeah, we totally could that.
So it was right there, and actually, that was one of the reasons why Austin walked out the first time, is because they gave the match to, they had Hogan versus Rock, and Austin got Scott Hall, and it was kind of far off from the top, and Austin didn't feel like it was a big enough match for him for WrestleMania. And actually, I believe that they offered the match initially to Stone Cold, but he turned it down. He wanted to build up to it a little bit more or something, and so then Rock was the kind of the second guy. But and then it just never happened. I think they tried to get it to happen, but Stone Cold didn't think it would be very good, thought it would be a clash of styles, and so it just never happened. I think it could have worked.
You know what that tells me is it sounds like neither one of the guys wanted to do business for the other.
Right. Well, I mean, Hogan lost to The Rock, but I don't think I think that was different.
Yeah.
I think him losing to Stone Cold Steve Austin would have been a bigger deal. That kind of would have.
Well, and he knew The Rock, right? Like he grew up with, or The Rock grew up around the business,
That's
knowing
true.
who he was. Austin didn't, and there's probably some bad blood. I would be surprised to find out there was bad blood from his WCW days.
Oh yeah.
So,
because I think Stunning Steve Austin was, before Hogan came into WCW, he was kind of being groomed as the guy to replace Ric Flair and be that guy. But when Hogan came in, yeah, he wasn't getting anywhere near the top. So and then him losing to Hulk Hogan's buddies like Hacksaw Jim Duggan probably didn't help, and then him getting fired and all of that. But yeah, I bet you there was bad blood, and so it just never happened. And there just never was the right time to make that match happen. But I do feel like that's a big missed opportunity, because that was the two biggest stars probably ever.
Yeah, like The Rock and Hogan was fantastic, and it definitely had, that buy power or that sell power of that big match, that dream match you wanted. And they could have rode on the coattails of that building to SummerSlam even. Or not SummerSlam. The SummerSlam. Building the SummerSlam right after that, going towards having Austin Hogan. They could have told that story and had plenty of time to tell it and make it make sense. And have back-to-back huge buy rates.
Yeah, they could have, if they hadn't have turned Hogan or something, because I don't know if it would have worked with Hogan the baby face against Austin, because neither one of them would have wanted to, get booed against the other. If they were both baby faces. So obviously it was a big political thing there.
As it always is with Hogan.
Yeah. Well, Austin plays politics just as much.
I guess
he's
true.
Just beloved a little bit more sometimes.
Okay.
So moving on, match number 3 for the dream matches, Undertaker versus Sting. So this is one that came very close to happening.
Up till Seth Rollins, yes.
Wait, I don't know that story.
Seth Rollins is the one that injured Sting and caused
right.
Sting. Yeah.
Right, that's true. But it actually was supposed to happen earlier, before Sting was brought in. They had kind of toyed with the idea of bringing Sting in to wrestle the Undertaker. I forget which WrestleMania they were going to try to bring him in for. But Sting, he held out for a while, and because he was afraid of how he'd be used.
Yeah.
Looks like he was right. Because he came in and jobbed to Triple H, in his first match there, and then only wrestled a handful of times after that. But this match could have been really, I don't know if how good it would have been, but I think that it definitely had that appeal of the Crow Sting versus the Undertaker. They could have it probably would have been corny, to be honest. They probably would have went over the top with special effects and lightning bolts and everything and crows, or whatever. So they probably would have made it very over the top and smoke and mirrors. But I personally think the best time for it to happen would have been if Undertaker had not had his last match against AJ Styles in the Boneyard match. If he had kept going, they could have done a cinematic match with Sting and Undertaker easily enough, and they could have protected them both.
Mm-hmm.
And then they could have done all of that, smoke and mirrors and done that, and probably could have made it very entertaining. It just wouldn't probably have been the best wrestling match. That's my opinion.
Well, I agree with that, and I think for when it would have happened, that probably would have been the best option. But for the opportunity of when it could have happened and been the best match is probably right after WCW got bought out, right? Because Taker was still able to move and was still able to go. Sting was still fairly fresh. I know he took a couple of years off from doing anything for healing up, essentially, after WCW went out or under. But let's say like 2004, right? 2004 would have been a great time because Taker was still going. Sting could have gone. Could brought in for that specifically and could have gone. It's totally something that could have happened.
Well, and Sting did go to TNA and had a pretty good run there.
Yeah.
And he kept re-signing with TNA when he could have went sooner.
Yep.
To WWE and probably could have had a better career if he had went sooner. I partially think that's kind of why he got used the way he did when he finally came over. It's almost to spite him because he waited so long and held out on them when, Vince probably saw him, as the one guy that wouldn't come over. And so, yeah, I don't know. Maybe things could have been different if he had come over sooner and when his body wasn't as beat up.
Yeah, or for both of them, too. Taker would have been the same problem.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know if it would have been any good, but it would have, at least the fan interest would have been there.
Oh, yeah.
Because people speculated on that match for years.
And again, like, the sooner to the WCW buyout would have been the best because you would have had more fans, more casual fans being able to want to see it. Because if it would have happened when he finally came over in 2017, I think it was when he came over, somewhere around there.
Sounds about right.
Then, that was 16 years after WCW went under. So people would have not been watching. People would not have really cared as much. So you could have had an opportunity to catch those old fans and bring them into the company. You would have had a better buy rate all around. Not saying that even at 2017 they couldn't have had a huge buy rate with just those two, but.
And actually, I think he came over in 2015 because he wrestled Triple H at WrestleMania 31.
Okay, so 15.
And yeah, so that was in 16, and he debuted in Survivor Series right before that. So
there you go.
So yeah, yep. Me and my encyclopedia brain.
I was close. I knew it was right around there. So.
Yes, yeah, close enough.
But yeah, that would have been a big match either which way. So
yeah. So the next one I've got is AJ Styles versus Shawn Michaels.
Oof.
So this one actually almost did happen.
Mm-hmm.
They pitched the idea to Shawn. It was, but it was after Shawn had already been
retired.
Yeah. From his match with the Undertaker, and they were gearing up for the Royal Rumble in San Antonio, Texas, and AJ Styles was, I believe, he was the champion at the time. And so they had pitched him defending, he was kind of calling out Shawn Michaels in on Twitter and whatnot. And they had pitched the idea, but Shawn turned it down because, number one, he probably felt like he couldn't keep up with an AJ Styles. If he was going to come out of retirement, he didn't want to look bad. I kind of wish he would have stayed with that thought
Right.
for the match he did come out of for because it couldn't have been worse than the tag match that he came back for where he teamed with Triple H against Undertaker and Kane. That was just I've yet to watch it actually, but I've heard it's horrific.
I haven't watched it either. I can't. I love Sean too much. I don't want to see that as his last match.
Yeah. And so Sean versus AJ couldn't have been worse. It would have, maybe it wouldn't have lived up to the hype, but I think it would have been decent because AJ could have probably still carried him to a good match, and Sean probably had enough to have somebody like an AJ Styles carry him. But yeah, it almost happened. It didn't. I know Sean said if he was going to come out of retirement, it was going to be he felt like he could have had a better match with somebody like a Samoa Joe or something like that, where he could have taken a beating and done his selling and came back. And honestly, seeing Samoa Joe versus Shawn Michaels would have been a pretty good idea too. They could have just stole the template of AJ Styles and Samoa Joe, and that would have been pretty good. But as far as Sean and AJ goes, I wish we would have seen it because it would have been. It definitely would have had the fan interest.
I agree, very much so. I do have one that just popped in my head out of nowhere. That was one that was possible to happen, and I think I would consider it a dream match. But it would have been harder to say relative to now, and it would have been Christopher Daniels versus Austin.
Okay.
So the rumor, or the I guess not rumor, the unofficial statement that during the ministry, the higher power that was supposed to come in, that ended up being McMahon, was actually supposed to be the introduction of Christopher Daniels into WWE.
And that's not a rumor. Bruce Pritchard has come out and said that was originally what was going to happen. Vince, it was Vince Russo's idea to have Christopher Daniels be the higher power because of his fallen angel gimmick at the time, and I guess they were going to do it, and then Vince McMahon had no idea who Christopher Daniels was, and when he saw him, he didn't like his size. He was too small. He was like, I don't get it. This guy's going to be the higher power. And then they tried to pivot, with somebody else. But then Vince eventually was like, you know what? I'll just do it because they had nobody leading up to it. And that's how we got. It was me, Austin. It was me all along.
Yep.
Which honestly, I love that because I've used that so many times. Just busting that out. It's hilarious.
Well, and the story allowed it to proceed longer with the McMahon Austin whole thing and everything else. But there was a lot of loose ends that fell out because of it and such. But with that being said, like Christopher Daniels was at, I would say, his peak of ability at that point. Maybe not the peak of his character and who like fan interest at the time. Because, he got a lot bigger through TNA and everything else. Right. But he was huge through ROH and on the indies. And I think that storyline had an opportunity to make him a WWE guy, like make him huge. And to see where that would have gone, especially doing a storyline with Austin, which how that was already pitched and working towards, that would have been a main event storyline. That would have been huge to see for both of those guys. Christopher Daniels is amazing. He can do great stuff in the ring and tell a great story. And, well, Austin's Austin, so.
Yeah, I know that another match that was supposed to happen around that time was they were going to have Dr. Death Steve Williams be built up to wrestle Stone Cold as an opponent. And the reason that didn't happen is because Vince Russo came up with the Brawl for All gimmick, and Dr. Death got knocked out by Bart Gunn and got injured. And it's hilarious if you listen to Jim Cornette rant about how he went up to Vince Russo after that and was like, you just pissed away millions of dollars. And he was like, what do you mean? And it's like, well, nobody's going to buy Dr. Death, against Stone Cold now, and so that match, you just, wasted millions of dollars, and Vince Russo kind of was like, well, we can do Bart Gunn versus Stone Cold Steve Austin, and that'll, we're making another star. Yeah, and
and then he just got his ass beat by
Butterbean.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and I'm sorry, Bart Gunn versus Stone Cold just wasn't going to cut it.
No.
Another thing for Shawn Michaels that would have been a dream match that possibly could have happened if Shawn had come out of retirement, obviously, but it's, never say never on that, is Shawn Michaels versus Daniel Bryan or Bryan Danielson, because
trainer versus
exactly.
student.
Yep, because Shawn trained him, and so that could have been a very good, if they had done the right storyline of, teacher versus student type thing, that could have been very good. I don't know, and I can imagine Bryan Danielson or Daniel Bryan, whatever you want, Daniel Bryan at the time, I believe that he could have had a good match with anybody, especially somebody like Shawn. He would have been able to get something good out of Shawn, even with Shawn being kind of broken down at that point. That the storyline alone and the promos would have been excellent, if they would have told that story.
I think too, Shawn would have cared more. Like when he comes back for the tag match, he didn't really seem to care per se. Like it almost felt like, from like the highlights I've seen of it, almost like a payday than anything else. And I think he would have cared to make Daniel Bryan. Like it would have been important to him, so he would have tried a lot more. He put a lot more effort into it.
Well, yeah, it was the guy he trained, so of course he would have, he probably would have cared enough to, make it, wanting to put him over and everything. And so, yeah, I would have liked to have seen that. I don't know if it would have still been as good as expectations, but that would have been good. Another match that almost happened, kind of.
Before you go on real fast, I was just thinking about one that kind of ties into this.
Yeah.
We have an opportunity right now of a really good match that could do a student and master or student teacher thing, and that is Finn Balor and what the hell's his name? Is it DJ McCullough? Yeah, DJ McCullough, who just got brought up from NXT. He was trained by Finn Balor, and he's working great heel work. If Finn goes face after the whole run with Judgment Day and stuff like that, which is highly probable, he could totally have that match, and it's not a match we've seen before, so that can totally be a dream match right there. I think they both do great work.
Okay, I think we're getting really loose with dream match, because I don't even know who that guy is. I'm just being
you
honest.
Don't watch NXT. He was probably he was probably the best heel on NXT.
Okay, but he's still new. It's hard to say dream match when the guy's not a
it is very loose, and it is something that we haven't gotten to yet, but it's highly probable to happen. But it's one that popped in my head because we talked student and teacher, and that is something that right now could be done.
I mean, when you said, when you were talking about Finn Balor, like training somebody, I thought you were going to say Finn Balor and Becky Lynch, because I believe that Finn trained Becky, or at least they were at the same training school. I think he trained her.
He trained her initially, and then when she came over, of course, she got the Finley training. So,
yeah, so it's like, and honestly, I think Finn Balor versus Becky Lynch more of a dream match than what you just presented there. So.
You watch DJ McCullough; he's amazing.
I'd rather watch Becky.
Well, I mean, I can't fault you for that.
So the dream match I was going to talk about was it's another Stone Cold one, but it's against CM Punk. So you didn't think we'd get through an episode without talking about CM Punk, right?
I was hoping.
So this actually, they were doing they were filming promos, face-to-face promos or sit-down promos against each other when they were promoting the video game. And that would have been a built-in storyline If Stone Cold was going to come back, he should have come back for that, because you could have done the beer drinking Texan, Stone Cold against the straight edge, CM Punk, and tell me that wouldn't have written itself. Like, even if the match wasn't any good, the promos would have been insane.
I think it could have been really good, especially at that time, because I did actually like Punk at that time. And I think he was doing some of his best work at the straight edge time that he was doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that could have been something that we could have seen. But that one's a little bit farther away. So from, I would say, a dream match, only because Austin had already had his last match up to that point, and he was not physically ready to do something. And to be honest, outside of Owens, I don't know of anybody that could carry Austin through a match to make him look as good. I don't think Punk would have done it. I think he had the ability. I don't think he would have done it.
I don't know. It would have been money, though.
Oh,
it definitely would have been money. I was psyched to possibly see it at the time.
The concept of the story, like you said, the promos would be great. And Austin, if he could go, those two would have a great match. But I think, one, the two styles clash a little bit, but more importantly, I don't think that Punk would be willing to carry Austin in the way he needed to be carried at that time.
Yeah, it's something I would have liked to have seen, though. Here's one. Going for one favorite to another. Bret the Hitman Hart versus Kurt Angle. Now, hear me out on this, because when Bret had obviously already retired and had his stroke and everything by the time Kurt Angle was kind of making it big in WWE. But Bret talks about how he had a dream that he was wrestling Kurt Angle, and he woke up dreaming that he had Kurt Angle in a headlock, and he said that if he could have still wrestled, he would have liked to have wrestled Kurt Angle. And that match, if Bret could have still gone, like if he didn't get that kick from Goldberg and he was still able to return, and I think he would have eventually returned if he could have still wrestled and WCW was bought out, I think he would have returned a lot sooner. And I think he would have ended his career there.
Yeah.
But Bret versus Kurt, that's a dream match that when they were both, even if Bret wasn't what he could have been, or what he was before, Kurt Angle definitely could have carried Bret to a great match. They could have just chain wrestled and it would have been good.
Well, I think too, like they were just ships in the night if you think about it, because what was it, late 97, 98 was when Kurt Angle was going to do stuff with ECW.
Yeah, I think it was 98 because he debuted in WWF in 99, late 99.
Yeah, so there was an opportunity when they both could have been working at the same time that they could have done something. There was always that possibility. I mean, it would have been super green Kurt, but even that, like, think back on Kurt Angle's time when he was green, when he first started, he was still fantastic.
Yeah.
Kurt is like one of the best workers of all time, only because he just got it right out of the gate. So,
yeah, I mean, it's Kurt. If he would have not been broken down and everything, he'd probably be considered the greatest of all time if he would have kept going like Shawn did in his second run, But just based on the quality of matches he was having, even in TNA, he was having great matches with AJ Styles and Samoa Joe and so many others there. So, yeah, sadly, that match couldn't have happened really. But it would have been great if it would have. Here's one that it kind of happened, but it didn't happen really on a big stage. or like on a pay-per-view even really, but kind of old school, but the Legion of Doom versus Demolition. This is a match that so Demolition, for those that don't know, was actually kind of created as a knockoff of the Road Warriors, Legion of Doom. And Demolition ended up being one of my favorite tag teams growing up, watching wrestling. And when the Road Warriors signed with the WWF and they came in as the Legion of Doom, they cost Demolition the tag team titles at SummerSlam. I want to say SummerSlam 91, against the Hart Foundation. And they never had a match on pay-per-view though, because Demolition ended up, kind of leaving, and Legion of Doom ended up winning the tag titles the following year. But that's a match I would have loved to have seen, just because they were so similar. They were basically created because of, or Demolition was created because of the Legion of Doom, and kind of Vince's answer to them when they were big over there.
Oh yeah,
and that could have drawn a lot of good money on pay-per-view.
Who was it that was in WCW? Was it Legion or Road Warriors, or was it Demolition that was doing that stint with Kevin Sullivan as the manager? Or am I thinking somebody totally different?
You might be thinking of somebody different. Were you thinking of the Powers of Pain?
No, it was like they were doing like this occulty thing, and it felt Road Warriors ways. I swear they had the shoulder pads, but I'm trying to like stretch my brain. Really,
I think you're thinking of Powers of Pain, Warlord and Barbarian.
Maybe it's been
'Cause they-
so long. Like I have this really vague memory of Kevin Sullivan cutting a promo, sitting on like a throne, and then they're like right next to him, on like opposite ends of him, and he's talking, telling about what's going on.
I'm googling it right now.
Oh man, it's gonna drive me nuts. Like, and I was never a big fan of Kevin Sullivan. Like, he just reminded me of like an annoying gremlin the whole time I ever saw him. So, but I can't even remember what the promo was or who they were working. I was super young, remember watching it, but I cannot remember who he was managing for that tag team at the time.
Huh.
But yeah, it.
Let's see. I'm not sure.
Okay, well, it's fine. It did. I don't know why that just struck me one though, with a dream match that, in theory, could still happen,
Okay.
and that would be Alundra Blaze / Medusa versus Trish Stratus. Or I'm sorry, not Trish Stratus. Beth Phoenix.
Ooh.
Because both can still go. They don't really work anymore, but they both could. I happen to have the ability of seeing Alundra Blaze, meeting her just a couple months ago at a show, and she's still in fantastic shape. So she could easily go and have a match with Beth Phoenix, and I think Beth could carry her through a good match. And they both have very similar styles and very similar abilities in what they did. So I think they both could have a fantastic match, even now. But even then, like, I think they could have gone with Beth was hot.
Yeah. Yeah, if she had returned sooner, like after WCW was bought out or whatnot.
Exactly.
And, did she like make an appearance in any of those women's Royal Rumbles? Recently?
Yes, she's. I can't remember. She wasn't in the last one, but I can't remember if she was in the one before that or the one before that. But it's been within the last 3. She's made an appearance as Alundra Blaze. So
Yeah. I'm glad Trish Stratus is back, because she's knocking out some of the dream matches I would have had with her.
yeah. Sadly, we're gonna miss out on one. I think Bailey's injured again.
Sad.
So
Yeah, I heard about that.
same knee she was out for over a year with. So hopefully she recovers quickly. But that would have been a great match to see as those two.
Well, I mean, that wasn't what was scheduled recently, right? It was Becky and Trish we were going to wrestle again, right?
Becky and Trish have been the one going for a while, but I think if they worked it out where Trish, like if she stays around, of course,
right?
If she goes face, and her and Bayley would be a good match against each other. I think Bayley would be able to cut some good promos against Trish.
Yeah, that could still happen.
Yeah,
depending on how long Bayley's out and if Trish sticks around, like you said, it could still potentially happen, and that one would be good. Trish, I don't know. I still think she has a good run left here.
I agree.
So this one's kind of an interesting one, and it's DX versus the NWO. And I say that because it almost kind of could have happened when Sting wrestled Triple H. If you remember at WrestleMania, they had DX and the NWO do run-ins kind of as a nostalgia thing and smoke and mirrors for the match and whatnot. But I think that had some legs to maybe be booked as kind of a nostalgia tag match against each other. You could have done maybe that would have been one for Shawn to come back for. You got Shawn and Triple H and I guess the New Age Outlaws against Hogan, Nash, Hall, and I guess X-Pac would have done NWO, because I think he came out with the NWO instead of for DX, which is weird, by the way.
Yeah,
because I think he was a much bigger star in DX than he was in than the NWO. He was just kind of a
they could have built it with a storyline of like both teams are like reaching out to him to work with them, kind of thing.
Yeah. He could have been, which side is he going to be on?
Yeah.
To go against the others. That could have been interesting.
Mind you, when you say running, by the way, at the age that they were, there was no running. They were doing walkers in. So
yeah, they needed those
WrestleMania 3 freaking
yes,
golf carts down.
Yes, can you imagine them just coming down and that waiting forever for them to do a run in to break up a pinfall or interfere in the match? That would have been great. I kind of think that's how all run-ins should be done from now on. Yeah, the music hits and they stop pinning them to look up and they just start coming down on the golf cart. Oh man.
That reminds me of when Hardy came back went to TNA, not to TNA, to AEW. Jeff did, and he does it as an attempt to go save Matt from being beat up by Ethan Page, and like Jeff's like sitting there doing his dance as his music's hitting, so he's just dancing down the aisle as Matt is getting the crap kicked out of him by Ethan Page in the
ring. Yes. Love it. Let's see. Any other dream matches you can think of that could have happened?
I'm
thinking of I mean, there's one that could have happened if they had done it right, where Ric Flair versus Stone Cold Steve Austin, and I think they eventually did wrestle a match, but there was a time where Ric Flair was when he was getting sued by Eric Bischoff, and they were talking about him like leaving to go to WWF, and they were talking about him coming in and being the corporate champion of Vince to go against Austin. I think that would have been amazing. And I think Flair at that point could still go a little bit, so that could have been pretty good.
In what, 99? Yeah, he could have done that.
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah, I think it would have been. Yeah, it would have been. Actually, no, I think it was 90. It was 98.
Was it?
So it was like Austin was really hot, and so I think in 98 Flair could have done that.
Oh yeah,
because he was still he would end up winning the WCW title in '99 again. So yeah, that could have still been good, and Flair would have been really over having jumped. That would have been good.
I have one that's not one that could have happened, but is definitely a dream match that had just popped into my head, and I wish it could have happened. Is AJ Styles versus Hayabusa.
Ooh.
For those who don't know, Hayabusa was a fantastic worker in Japan. He's kind of the guy who invented like a ton of the high flying concepts and moves. 450, the shooting star press, Phoenix, the Phoenix Splash, like so many great moves that he invented. Sadly, he was injured in a match. He ended up breaking his neck and was pretty much quadriplegic from that point on. He did eventually get the use back of his arms and a little bit of his legs before he passed. He passed 4 years ago, 5 years ago, somewhere around there. Pre-COVID, but just pre-COVID. But AJ has talked how he was a big fan of Hayabusa, and he has mimicked some of his ability and style from Hayabusa, which you can totally see. So I think seeing those two in a match, Hayabusa's peak as well as with AJ Styles, I think that would have been a great match to watch.
Yeah, it would have been. It probably would have been a spot fest a little bit, but
I probably more than most AJ matches, but I think AJ would have been able to tell a good story with it. And AJ does really good work with Japanese workers, stuff like that. So, I guess there we go. There's another dream match that could happen now I think about it. And that is an actual let them do what they want to dream match between Shinsuke Nakamura and AJ Styles.
Oh my gosh. I don't know if it qualifies as a dream match because we've seen it. We've seen it both done great and we've seen it done badly. Oh. So I guess that's the very definition of a dream, right?
Right.
It's like, is it
yeah. Allow the main event audience to see it. Like allow the mainstream, not the main event, the mainstream audience to see it. Because they've only seen the not good one. And they've never worked again.
Right. Yeah, it was no, I think they had two matches. Because I think after Shinsuke turned on AJ Styles with the low blow, I think they wrestled one other time on the next pay-per-view.
Yeah, but it was more of a payback match. So then they went and did essentially the same finish with AJ giving the kick in the nuts this time.
Yeah.
But let them just go to have the match.
That whole story was bogus.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when Shawn Michaels wrestled Mr. Perfect at WrestleMania, or no, at SummerSlam '93. And they were like promoting it as it's going to be the world's, or the WWF's greatest intercontinental title match in history. The two greatest intercontinental champions going at it. And then the match ended in a disqualification with Diesel hitting Mr. Perfect on the outside or running him into the post, and it did not live up to expectations. And it should have, because they both could still go. So I don't know what happened there, but just didn't have the chemistry.
Could you imagine Kurt Angle and Bryan Daniels? Or not Kurt Angle, excuse me, Kurt Hennig is what I meant. Kurt Hennig and Bryan Daniels. Kurt Angle too.
Both of those would have been great. Both of those would have been fantastic.
Any set of those three together.
Triple threat match.
That would have been awesome too.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Can you imagine Chris Benoit against Daniel Bryan? That would have been amazing.
Did you see that TikTok from the video of Paul Heyman talking about Benoit?
I did not.
So I can't remember where it was. It was a Q&A that Paul Heyman was doing. I think it was like a con or something like that. And somebody asks, somebody like starts chanting for Benoit. And he's like, "That's my boy." And Benoit and Paul Heyman goes off and's like, ostensibly says, as a worker, Benoit was fantastic. He's in the top 5 of the best workers of all time. As a human, and I don't care about CTE, he made a choice that he did not give the other two a choice. He is a horrible person and a murderer. He didn't give the other two a choice. He could have just ended it himself. And he went this quick tirade. It's like a minute and 30 seconds.
Ooh.
Yeah. I was going to send it to you too, damn it. I forgot to. But yeah, he had it was a thing. And as much as, the brain damage with the CTE and everything else is obviously to blame, don't know if I can really disagree with him.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we'll never truly know exactly what was going on that day, over
Yeah.
that weekend, and kind of what led to what or whatnot. But it's just sad because his whole legacy basically got washed away
It's true.
with that, because he would have went down as one of the greatest of all time.
I think if you look at it as his work rate, as the worker he was, I think you would still put him down on that list.
Yeah, I mean, his triple threat match with Shawn and Triple H at WrestleMania 20 and their Backlash match the following month, two of the greatest triple threat matches you'll ever see. It was a highlight of it was definitely one of the best WrestleMania matches ever.
Mm-hmm.
And I can still go back and watch those matches and still be like, my God, this is almost a perfect match.
Yeah.
And it's just sad because never get into the Hall of Fame and never
justifiably.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, how could you, right?
Yeah,
because the sad part is that they'll probably never put in Nancy into the Hall of Fame either, because people would bring up too much. They'd have to bring up the whole Benoit thing, and they probably don't even want to touch that with a 10-foot pole.
No, and again, as they really shouldn't as a business. Like, you have to keep away from that thing, which is sad. So, with that being said,
yep.
Let's pivot away from that. Any other matches you had in mind?
I got to think of one other because we cannot leave on that down note. What about
Doink the Clown and Eugene?
Oh my God. I don't know why, but that seems like the perfect match, though. Right? Like I almost had to think to myself, they're not the same person,
Well, to be fair, Eugene did work as Doink in a match.
Yeah, they did. He did put on that makeup and do that for it. Oh my gosh! Can you imagine
OG Matt Bourne and Eugene?
Yes, original heel Doink against Eugene. Can you imagine that story? That would have been fantastic.
Have him be afraid of clowns.
Oh my gosh! But it starts but what if he they do a whole It storyline with Georgie, right? Where he has a balloon, and Eugene's all innocent, reaching for the balloon, and then he gets attacked, or whatever. By it could be just by one Doink or multiple Doinks or whatever, and then oh my gosh, multiple Doinks, and then they do these skits where Eugene's having nightmares and it shows the bubble of him, having the nightmares of clowns and him tossing and turning. Oh my gosh, it's so campy, and yet I feel like we got robbed that we did not see this.
Okay, I can see the story right now. Okay, so you have right during the whole time where Eugene was super hot, right? Bischoff comes out and is like, "Look, I'm sorry, you're my nephew. Let me give you a birthday that you never got to have." And he's like, "Oh, okay." So he's like, and, goes through this whole thing. He's like, "I even got you a clown because I know how much you love clowns." And then Doink comes out, and then they start the whole thing, and he creates a fear of clowns in him from that.
Yes,
that whole instance, and they just tell a story over 2 months of him being terrified. Even have it where Eugene might go for an IC title or something, and as he's going for it, up on the Titantron, you just see Doink, and then a bunch of people around the ring are all wearing Doink makeup, masks, and stuff like that, just to terrify him, and he freaks out and runs off and gets 10 counted out. Like, there's so much opportunity that could have been done with that. Oh,
And I'm thinking of something they could have done right now. Hold on. What if oh my gosh, so they do this where he has a fear of clowns, and then remember the clown from that Mick Foley brought out for the Rock's This Is Your Life?
Oh, Miss whatever.
Yerpel. It was Yerpel.
Yeah,
was the clown, right? Yerpel makes an appearance, and Eugene is just like petrified and like screams like a little girl seeing Yerpel. And then Mick Foley like kind of comes and looks at Yerpel, is like, kind of shrugs their shoulders or something. There's a moment there, I swear.
She looks over and goes, "It happens all the time."
Yeah, like. And then Mick Foley could have walked away. It's like, all right, well, have a nice day. You know, it's like, oh my gosh, like they missed a moment.
Oh my gosh!
But that's where we have to end this show. That's a much better note,
right? And not only that, but that's money too. Like, that could have totally made money.
It totally could have. I want to see this now. I really do. We need to create a time machine, go back and make this happen.
Well, we have to save Matt Bourne before that, so.
Yeah, you're right. We have to save him, and then we have to make this angle happen. Yes, it's. Yeah, that would have been so awesome.
Oh my gosh, it was so good.
We can't top that. So, like, in the credits, like we can't top that.
All right, guys. Well, that being said, we are going to go ahead and end that. But let me know, guys. Is there any ones that we missed out? Any dream matches that you can think about? Either ones that could still happen, or had the opportunity of happening because of time, but just never worked. Like, they were working at the same time, but just never happened. Or what would be a dream match like this one with Eugene and Tony the Clown? But let us know. Reach out to us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at BeHero Media. And of course, you can reach out to us through BeHeroMedia.com. You can also reach out to me directly on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Mike Burke DCW, and on Twitter, Mike Burke Pro. And then you can reach out to Psycho at Psycho Wrestling on Facebook. And all right, guys, so coming up for Devotion Championship Wrestling, we will be in Salt Lake City for the Wild Wild West Festival on July 11th. I'm sorry, August 11th. We already passed July. August 11th. In Salt Lake City, it'll be a good time. It's a really fun festival, along with, all the cowboy crap you can drink and stuff. It's good times. And watch wrestling. Along with that, we will also be doing our next Tussle Time 7, August 26th. And also our next show for Light Tree Studio on August 19th. And then our big show we're going to be having, DCW Control, which will be on September 16th, which will feature EC3 and Chris Adonis, formerly Chris Masters. So come out to the show. It'll be a good time. I'm super excited. That show for Control is already selling out. So please get your tickets now by going to Devotion Championship Wrestling on Facebook or DCW Salt Lake City on Twitter to get your tickets now. All right, Psycho, is there anything else going on that you could think of? Anything left?
No, I'm just hoping I don't have nightmares of clowns now.
Or Eugene.
Both of those would be nightmares.
I was showing the Grocery Gene the other day, and because I can't remember why, but it popped up, and I forgot how good a character work Eugene did.
Yeah.
Is it Nick Dinsmore?
Nick Dinsmore.
He was such a good character worker with Eugene. It was amazing. So, with all that being said, guys, for the rest of Be Hero, it has been me and Psycho, and that's us tapping out. Have a good night, guys.